Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator. And Lucky wants to come say hi. I'm not picking you up. I'm not picking you up. I'm sorry, because you're too scared. You want to come up and say hello? Okay, you have to be good. Okay. Lucky never wants to get up anymore. Oh. She's been very bad today. This morning, she's attacked me twice. But she's on her she finally took her medication. And now she wants to go up and say hello. Okay. All right, you're not going to attack me. Okay. That's a good dog. Don't attack me on the bathtub because people like you. They don't see what you're like when you're at home and you're crazy. Anyway, her anti-anxiety meds are working. I wasn't expecting her to come up. We put Dodo away. This is a Dodo-free bathtub today in the office, and we're here. It's actually good for Lucky to be here because hopefully she'll be here. We're very close to our 5,000th subscriber. It's hard to believe that 5,000 people have so little to do that they're going to take time to push a button and subscribe to this ridiculous show. And oh, Lucky. Oh, it's like the puppy. He's back. And so, I'm going to probably put an announcement like the next week, and we're going to have a virtual cocktail party where you can bring non-virtual cocktails, and you can bring your pets. And it'll just be, we did this once before. If I can remember how to do it, we're going to do a live chat stream and everyone can chat and ask questions. And we're going to try to have party games, basically like party questions. Someone's already given me a good idea for a party question. So we can ask everybody party questions and nobody wins anything. And if they win anything, I might give them Lucky. Would you like to go live with somebody else? Are you going to get down? Huh? Do you want to get up or walk down? It's hard to talk with you up here. Okay, do you want to get down? Go ahead. Want to get down? Or you want to stay up here? Don't get stressed. Okay, that's all I care. All right, so you gotta get ready for this. Okay, good dog, good dog. We didn't have a confrontation. So that was good. This was okay. It looks like she's almost normal, but she's not. Anyway, we don't want you to miss this because this is going to be one of those big celebration. This is going to be a big bash. You're going to really feel bad if you miss the 5,000 subscriber episode. I mean, there's like things that everyone's going to remember where they were when we hit 5,000. Like when people landed on the moon, people remember that, and the Kennedy assassination. I was trying to remember other great events where people remember where they were that day. And in 50 years from now, you're going to remember the day where you were, the 5,000 subscriber episode, when you came to the party and we did party games. All right, that's enough chatter. Today, you have to pretend we have theme music. The theme music is Mason Williams's Classical Gas. So hear it in your head. And pretend you're hearing it, because this is a Classical Gas episode. And this is where we answer the question. We ask the question, is this classical writer worth, this kind of classic writer who's always taught in classes and who's told you is like this important writer, are they really worth reading? It's a very simple grading system. We have yeah, we have a nay, and then we have a hell yeah. Most of them come into hell yeah categories, but today maybe not exactly. Anyway, I've talked a lot about why I've often made fun of Henry James in my life and kind of frustrated. I'm a frustrated non-lover of Henry James. I've always kind of wondered what it was about him that people liked, because a lot of people I know love him, and I have liked him at times. And other times I've read him and said, what the hell? Why did I ever like anything about him? So anyway, recently, for various reasons, I reread the one book I love the most of Henry James. I really liked it. I don't feel passionately about any Henry James books, but I really, really liked The Portrait of a Lady when I read it in grad school. In this past week, for some reason, I found this cool old edition. I really miss I love all the orange spine penguins. And I found this copy, and it made me want to read it even more. So I went and I read it about a week, and I really enjoyed it the second time. In fact, I enjoyed it even more than the first time. And I didn't quite love it, but I will say this, that I was actually absorbed in the book. There's a lot of long classical novels, you come in and out of, but I found myself really looking forward to spending an hour or two just sitting with this in the bathtub or in the office and reading it. So anyway, Henry James is The Portrait of the Lady. That's our subject today. We won't say anything particularly important. We'll just talk a little bit about what we liked. The reason I keep going back to Henry James is I've talked about this before. One of my favorite literary biographies that I've ever read was the first volume of Sheldon Novick's 2-volume biography of Henry James. The first one was called The Young Master. I read this about 15 years ago in London, And it made me go back and try to read Henry James. I read his first 6, 8 novels, and I kind of dragged my ass through all of them. I was never thrilled about any of those books. Roderick, I've got them all somewhere. The Americans, the Europeans, and Roderick Hudson and stuff like that. Anyway, I loved the book, and he writes very well about this, just about the writerly life of Henry James and what was about his love for writing. He kind of opens the, I want to say this, opens the closet. It's not kind of, but he talks about the gay life of Henry James, or the gay relationships of Henry James, in a very respectful, kind of muted way. So he doesn't really talk about, he doesn't say what was going on between Henry James and various different men that he had fairly intense relationships with, but he makes it pretty clear there probably were gay relationships, and he doesn't kind of overdo it. He doesn't make it like it's some big revelation. He also, at the same time, he doesn't make it the importance of Henry James's life, but he does respectfully deal with these issues. But mainly just the writerliness of Henry James and how much he loved to write, and his whole relationship and his incredible relationship with people. He was a big lover of other people and other writers. So that gave me the reason to go. I started rereading the Henry James's, the second volume, The Mature Master. I started it again. I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna come and go with this second volume. They're available in Kindle, so I'm getting rid of these. These are going into the digitizing shelf because I got them on Kindle. But I have to say, Novick really made me go back to James when I thought I would never try it again. I'm sure I've said this show I don't even want to read Henry James. All right, so I'm going to talk a little, just very briefly. It's a really strange kind of novel. It's the writing is, if you're not in the right mood for Henry James, it could be really onerous. It could be really tedious. They're long paragraphs, often describing the light in the living room, or the tape is the curtains and how they fall across someone's face, and the thoughts that go through people's minds when you look at people and see them in a room and where they're standing. Some of those paragraphs you would think sometimes are exhausting. In the Portrait of a Lady, however, I was totally I enjoyed all those things. And partly it's because of the setup, which is about an American family. There's an elderly man. He's an American. I think he was a banker. And his son, Ralph. They're the Touchettes. I probably pronounced that wrong. The Touchettes. And they're somewhere in London. I forget where they are. Not in London. They're in the countryside. And the father is getting old, and his son is very sick. The son is sick throughout the novel, Ralph. And at the very beginning of the book, the mother comes home from a trip to America where she finds her niece. I think it's her niece, Isabel Archer. Isabel Archer is the central character. And she loves this girl. As soon as she meets her, she's this young, beautiful girl in her late teens, early 20s. And there's something about this woman that everybody loves. You don't really quite understand why, in a way, except that everybody talks about how wonderful she is. She's just so wonderful. As soon as you meet her, she's so wonderful. And the mother decides to bring her back to England. And that's this story, really, is this woman coming into society, and everybody who meets her loves her. I think she gets like 3 proposals of marriage, almost a proposal of marriage from her cousin, Ralph. Clear mountain water. No pixels. And everyone just talks about how wonderful she is. And she's basically turns down a sequence of people, a very wealthy aristocrat who lives nearby. And this guy, Caspar Goodwood, his name was Caspar Goodwood, which is definitely, I don't know if you'd use that name today, but Caspar is an American who follows her to England and so forth. And eventually, in the first half of the book, there's a lot of spoilers in this. I'm going to tell you, I'm just basically giving us a couple surprises in this. Halfway through the book, Ralph talks his father, who's ill and dying, into leaving a large part of the estate to Isabel so that she can be free. Because they see her as a free soul who shouldn't be tied up in marriage or religion or all this stuff. That she should have the freedom of movement that only wealth could give her. And they do that. They give her this money. They don't tell her why she gets it. The second half of the book is she meets a man. I forget his name now. He's not a well-off man. Osmond? I think his name's Mr. Osmond or something. And there's a character named Osmond, or he's a teacher, I think, or an artist. It's kind of a bit of a dilettantish artist. And he's got a daughter named Pansy, who is almost everyone. She's sublime too. There's something about these two women. Everybody just thinks is the most perfect person. And this girl, Pansy, has been raised in a convent, and you don't know anything about where Pansy comes from, or she's this man's daughter, Mr. Osmond's daughter, but you don't know anything about. No one ever mentions where it happened to her mother. This is one of the weird parts of the plot that I find strange. No one mentions her mother or where she came from or anything like that. And eventually, because of these different various characters, try to arrange that Isabel will marry this man and help him take care of this girl, who's everyone thinks is wonderful. And eventually, Isabel is sort of, and I guess you could say she's tricked into it, though the whole relationship between them seems very honest and very genuine. But she marries him, and it turns out to be a terrible marriage. You find out we cut to several years later in the marriage, and they're not happy at all, and she's not very happy either. Okay, so I'm not going to say too much more about the plot, except that because there doesn't seem to be a plot in Henry James. It just seems like series of set pieces, people sitting around talking about how wonderful Isabel is, or why people like her, or why they don't like this person, or why this person was interesting. There's lots of long periods of dialogue, lots of descriptive passages. For some reason, I just was completely absorbed and enjoyed it very much this time. And it's not really until the last 50 pages where we find out that there's been a secret all along. No one's ever told Isabel, or it seems like Isabel has never even asked about Pansy's mother, or where the mother is, or what her history is. And we suddenly have one character, I can't remember, is Madame Merle, or the Countess, the sister of the man she marries, comes into it and tells her the secret history. I don't want to, I won't tell you now because it's not too important, but there is a secret reason why this man wants to marry Isabel, and why other people want her to take care of this girl. Okay, so there's this weird plot. It kind of comes out of nowhere, and the last 50 pages are kind of brilliant. They're kind of really fun. I really enjoyed them. They were very different from a Henry James novel because there was actually a story. I felt like Steve Martin, there's a plot deal. There's actually a plot in this whole novel, which I didn't realize was there until I got to the end. Anyway, that's a lot of talk. I want to read two very brief passages just to give you an idea what people do. This is from near the end of the book, and there's lots of dialogue about what people are doing at parties. This one is about Pansy. There's two different men who are interested in marrying Pansy, and they're at this party, this cotillion or whatever the hell it is, and they basically, Isabel's trying to decide who should dance with her at this party. I mean, it sounds totally stupid, but for some reason it's absorbing. So she goes up to this one young man named Edward Rosier, who's really smitten by her, and he says, she goes up to him and she says, "You better go away then if you're not going to dance with her. You have to dance with her." He says, "I shall not go." He lets Miss Lord Warburton comes by, and she explains to Lord Warburton, "That's the young man I've told you about, who's in love with Pansy." "Ah, yes, I remember. He looks rather bad. He has reason. My husband won't listen to him." The husband doesn't want her to marry. The husband wants his daughter to marry a rich person. "What's the matter with him?" Lord Warburton inquired. "He seems very harmless. He hasn't money enough, and he isn't very clever." Lord Warburton listened with interest. He seemed struck with his account of Edward Rosier. "Dear me, he looked a well set-up young fellow." "So he is, but my husband's very particular." "Oh, I see." And Lord Warburton paused a moment. "How much money has he got?" And he then ventured to ask. "Some 40,000 francs a year." 1,600 pounds? Ah, but that's very good, you know. "So I think. My husband, however, has larger ideas." Anyway, just a brief passage. A lot of the dialogue is about who should be married, who should be dancing with somebody, who should be eating next, and who's sitting next to each other at the table. And if someone described this book to me that I would really enjoy reading it, I would say you're nuts. Anyway, I want to read one last little passage. There's so many passages I particularly like, particularly near the end. And I would say that the last 40 pages are really powerful, really moving. I will say that it's about the death of one of the principal characters. And he pulls it off really well. And this is when Isabel goes back to this house, her American family's house, and she goes to see her cousin who's very ill. I just want to read this one paragraph because it is the descriptive passage that he does well, and one of the better ones. Isabel's arrival at Garden Court on this second occasion was even quieter than it had been on the first. Ralph Touchette kept but a small household, and to the new servants Mrs. Osmond was a stranger. so that instead of being conducted to her own apartment, she was coldly shown into the drawing room and left to wait while her name was carried up to her aunt. She waited a long time. Mrs. Touchette appeared in no hurry to come to her. She grew impatient at last. She grew nervous and scared as if the objects about her had begun to show for conscious things, watching her trouble with grotesque grimaces. All these objects that he describes with this fascination of all the characters are looking back at her. The day was dark and cold. The dusk was thick in the corners of the wide brown rooms. The house was perfectly still, with a stillness that Isabel remembered. It had filled all the place for days before the death of her uncle. She left the drawing room and wandered about, strolled into the library and along the gallery of pictures where, in the deep silence, her footstep made an echo. Nothing was changed. She recognized everything she had seen years before. It might have been only yesterday she had stood there. She envied the security of valuable pieces which change by no hair's breadth, only grow in value while their owners lose inch by inch youth, happiness, beauty. All these beautiful things that are what everyone loves because they can retain their beauty while people are fading and dying and getting old. And she became aware that she was walking about as her aunt had done on the day she had come to see her in Albany. She was changed enough since then. That had been the beginning. It suddenly struck her that if her Aunt Lydia had not come that day in just that way and found her alone, everything might have been different. She might have had another life, and she might have been a woman more blessed. So in the same way that she's fascinated by all these things around her, she had been waiting at her American house when her aunt came, and her aunt saw her as an object almost that she wanted to have and acquire. Anyway, some beautiful passages in it. I'll say it's worth, if you want to try, this is one of the questions we'll probably ask at our 5,000 Bathtacular, is that if you started with one book by a writer, I would start with Portrait of a Lady. This is the one that I do have affection for, and it makes me want to try to read some more Henry James. All right, this went too long, sorry, but we had Lucky. We couldn't turn down Lucky when she's being social. I can't ignore her. And we'll have we'll do another short one, and then I'm going to put an announcement probably next week. We'll set up a date so you guys can get all your cocktails ready, get them all, put them in the mixer, get everything ready. You want everything set because you don't want to miss this. Especially if you miss the moon landing or you missed the Kennedy assassination, you don't want to miss the 5,000th subscriber Bathtacular. Stay safe.